This is SpaceTime, Series 28, Episode 135, for broadcast on the 17th of November 2025. Coming up on SpaceTime: spectacular auroral activity cover the planet's skies, Earth's largest modern impact crater discovered in southern China, and a key NASA communications disk damaged and out of action. All that and more coming up on SpaceTime.
Welcome to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary.
Planet Earth's been treated to a spectacular series of auroral displays. The Aurora Australis and Aurora Borealis, the southern and northern lights, were triggered by three massive X-class solar flares, including an X5.1 event on November 11, Remembrance Day, which was the most powerful blast this year and the most intense since October 2024. These explosions triggered a series of coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, including a fast so-called cannibal CME travelling at 1,500 km per second, which caught up with and consumed two earlier CMEs as all three headed directly towards the Earth. The events were monitored by SOHO's LASCO and the GOES 19 Core 1 chronographs. The X5.1 event was caused by an eruption from a highly active sunspot region known as AR 4274, which had been erupting violently for days. AR 4274 is enormous, with primary dark umbra cores as wide or even wider than the Earth, and an overall active region more than a dozen Earths in diameter. The number of sunspots on the solar surface increases as the Sun moves towards solar maximum, or solar max, the climax of its 11-year solar cycle. The current solar cycle, 25, began back in November 2019 and is now at its peak, so this sort of activity really isn't all that unusual. Sunspots are cooler and hence darker-looking regions on the Sun's surface, caused by magnetic field lines from deep inside the Sun extending out into space. As different latitudes of the Sun rotate at different rates, these magnetic field lines become twisted and can snap, causing magnetic reconnection and triggering powerful blasts of energy called solar flares. Solar flares are categorized in 5 main groups: A, B, C, M, and X, based on their X-ray intensity, with X being the most powerful. Each class represents a logarithmic 10-fold increase in energy, and each grouping is further divided into subclasses from 1 to 9, except for X-class events which can exceed 9 and so are considered open-ended. Solar flares can trigger coronal mass ejections, or CMEs. These are blasts of magnetic energy and charged particles or plasma from the Sun, which can be flung deep into space as geomagnetic storms. When these solar storms reach the Earth, the flux of ionized particles can slam into the planet's magnetosphere and are guided by the planet's magnetic field lines through the ionosphere, a region already filled with charged particles, and down towards the north and south magnetic poles. This triggers the excitation of atoms and molecules in the atmosphere, causing auroral displays just like those we've just witnessed. Different atoms and molecules light up in different colours at different altitudes. The colours being emitted depends on the particles being ionized. Reddish-brown glows are caused by the collision of particles with single oxygen atoms in the Earth's upper atmosphere, usually above 300 kilometres. Lower down, a green hue is created by single oxygen atoms down to an altitude of around 100 kilometres. The kaleidoscope turns to a whitish-yellowish beige when nitrogen's mixed in with the oxygen. Aurorae also exhibit blue, red and even purple glows in the lower atmosphere. These are caused by the excitation of molecular nitrogen below 100 kilometres. Auroral displays are common at high latitudes, but these latest events were seen globally at far lower latitudes than usual, including reports from Sydney and even as far north as Cairns in tropical Queensland. North of the equator, auroral activity was seen as far south as Florida. Space weather forecaster Jean Young from the Australian Bureau of Meteorology says auroral events are spectacular and well worth a look if you get the chance.
You do have to be pretty lucky to see an aurora, but if you do see one, you won't be disappointed. The brightest auroras are concentrated in rings called the aurora ovals around the north or south poles. The auroras in the northern hemisphere are called Aurora Borealis. The southern lights are called Aurora Australis. Australis comes from the Latin word for southern. They're best viewed from Antarctica, Tasmania, and the southern mainland coastlines. The colors displayed by an aurora are generally visible to the naked eye if you're near the poles. This is because the aurora is overhead and more intense. However, at lower latitudes, the auroras are on the horizon. Less color is seen by the naked eye. The lights tend to be shades of gray. However, if there is a high intense solar storm, there will be more color. Auroras can occur at any time in the year, but they're most likely to occur during the months of March and September. That's when the Earth's magnetic field is best oriented to interact with the solar wind. Of course, you ideally need a dark night with little cloud cover. You don't want a bright moon or any light pollution. So a good location is a dark beach or a hill where you have an unobstructed view to the south. Bright auroras usually last for 1 to 3 hours, and the best viewing time is around midnight between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. When we forecast solar wind conditions that look favorable for auroras occurring in the next 1 to 3 days, the forecasters from the Bureau's Space Weather Center issue what's called an Aurora Watch Notice. When there's a high chance that there will be an aurora visible now, we issue an Aurora Alert. To be truthful, nothing beats seeing an aurora with the naked eye.
That's space weather forecaster Janine Young from the Bureau of Meteorology. But as well as spectacular auroral displays, these space weather events can damage or even destroy spacecraft. They can disrupt communications and navigation systems, force aircraft to change their flight paths, trigger widespread power blackouts, and increase radiation exposure for astronauts and people in high-altitude aircraft. All 3 of the coronal mass ejections last week slammed into the Earth with the most severe X5.1 class event, powerful enough to cause radio blackouts across Africa and Europe and disrupt high-frequency communications on Earth's sunlit side. Forecasters from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration NOAA are evaluating the Sun's activity, and they could increase the threat level according to the space weather scales. There is currently a G3 watch in effect, which means there's a strong chance a geomagnetic storm could disrupt Earth's magnetic field and affect communications. If NOAA raises the watch level to a G4, that means there's a higher chance of widespread problems with electrical, communications, and spacecraft operations. The highest watch level is a G5. This report from NOAA.
What is space weather? When you think of weather, you probably think of Earth's weather. Snow, rain, and of course, sunshine. Thank goodness we only have Earth's weather to worry about, right? Actually, that's not quite true. Did you know the sun has weather too? We call this space weather. The sun is a bubbling, boiling ball of gas and energy. It constantly belches out great clouds of hot gas that is charged up with electricity. This stuff travels through space really fast, some of it right toward Earth. This means that Earth's weather happens inside the sun's weather. Thank goodness we're mostly protected from this blast by Earth's magnetic field and atmosphere. Solar wind flows outward from the sun. Charged particles in that solar wind interact with Earth's magnetic field. That interaction can cause energy and particles to stream down to Earth's poles. When these charged particles hit oxygen and nitrogen atoms in Earth's atmosphere, the energy from the collision can create beautiful shades of green and red. We call these glowing colors the Northern Lights and Southern Lights, or the Aurora Borealis and Aurora Australis. They are beautiful curtains of light that move and sway in the night sky. But sometimes the sun releases more energy than usual. These sudden and intense hiccups and burps are called solar flares and coronal mass ejections. These are huge explosions of high-energy X-rays, charged particles, and magnetic field. When the sun's burps of X-rays and charged particles and magnetic field reach Earth, they can cause trouble. Bad space weather can interrupt radio signals. It can also damage satellites. Electrical systems that bring power to our homes and businesses can be knocked out by this bad space weather too. That is why the GOES, short for Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite, has instruments like the Solar X-ray Imager to monitor the space around Earth for an increase in high-energy particles from the Sun. We can't see the Sun's harmful X-rays with our eyes, but these special telescopes can. Forecasters at the Space Weather Prediction Center analyze these observations and issue alerts and warnings about space weather that could harm satellites and the power grid. With early detection from satellites like the GOES-R series, power companies and satellite operators alike will have enough time to adapt to any troubling space weather headed our way.
This is SpaceTime. Still to come, Earth's largest modern impact crater discovered in southern China, and a key NASA communications dish is damaged and out of action. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. Scientists have discovered what appears to be the largest modern impact crater on Earth. The 900-metre-wide Jinling Crater was found in Guangdong Province in southern China, nestled on a hillside and preserved within thick granite weathering crust. A report in the journal Matter and Radiation at Extremes claims the impact structure dates to Earth's current geological epoch and is remarkably well preserved. Now, based on measurements of nearby soil erosion, the study's authors claim the impact likely hit during the early to mid-Holocene. That's the current geological epoch, which began at the end of the last ice age around 11,700 years ago. The study's lead author, Ming Cheng, says it's one of only around 200 identified craters worldwide and could provide new insights on how extraterrestrial bodies collide with the Earth. It's also the largest known impact crater from the Holocene, far exceeding Russia's 300-metre Malka crater, previously the largest known impact structure from this epoch. Ming says the discovery shows that the scale of impacts from small extraterrestrial objects on the Earth in the Holocene is far greater than previously recorded. In this case, the impactor would have been a meteor rather than a comet, which would have left a crater at least 10 kilometres wide. However, Ming and colleagues have not yet determined whether the impacting meteorite was made of iron or stone. The authors say one of the most surprising traits of the crater is how well preserved it is, especially given the region's monsoons, heavy rainfall, and high humidity, all conditions that accelerate erosion. Within the granite layers that help to protect and preserve the impact structure, the authors found many pieces of quartz with unique microfeatures called planar deformation features. Geologists can use this as evidence for some specific types of impacts. Ming says on Earth, the formation of planar deformation features in quartz only happens in really intense shock waves generated by celestial body impacts, and its formation pressure ranges from 10 to 35 gigapascals, which is a shock effect that cannot be produced by any geological processes of the Earth itself. Now, it's generally accepted that throughout Earth's history, virtually every point on the planet's surface faces a roughly equal chance of being hit by an extraterrestrial object. However, geological differences mean the historical footprints of these impacts have been eroded at different rates, and many have now fully disappeared. And that makes the Jinling Crater's discovery especially significant. Ming says the impact crater is a true record of Earth's impact history, and the discovery can provide scientists with a more objective basis for understanding the distribution, geological evolution, and impact history of small terrestrial bodies. This is SpaceTime. Still to come, NASA's confirmed that its key 70-metre Goldstone deep space communications dish is out of service following a major accident. And later in the science report, a new study says 2025 won't be the hottest year on record, but it will come in second or third. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. NASA has now confirmed that its key 70-metre Goldstone deep space communications dish is out of service following a major accident back in September. A report by NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, which operates the facility, says the antenna located near Barstow was over-rotated, damaging cabling and piping in the centre of the structure. JPL says hoses from the antenna's fire suppression system were also damaged in the incident, resulting in flooding. There is no timetable yet for its return to service. The antenna, designated as DSS-14, is the largest at the Goldstone complex and is essential for communication with multiple missions. Now, the facility does have 4 other antennas, but they're all smaller 34-metre dishes. NASA's Deep Space Network does have 2 other 70-metre dishes, one at its Canberra facility at Tidbinbilla and the other near Madrid in Spain. But the loss of DSS-14 is putting extra strain on the rest of the network, which is already at capacity, especially with the upcoming Artemis 2 manned mission to the Moon, which is slated for launch in April next year, although an earlier launch date of February is being considered. Other missions being affected include the Webb Space Telescope, with scientists having to adjust its operations because of the reduced access to the network following DSS-14's failure. This is SpaceTime. And time now to take a brief look at some of the other stories making news in science this week with a science report. The World Meteorological Organization says 2025 won't be the hottest year on record, but it will come in second or third. The new projections were released as part of the State of the Climate update ahead of the COP30 conference in Brazil. The new findings continue an alarming streak of hot years, with the 11 most recent years making up the 11 hottest years since records began. Average global temperatures between January and August this year were on average about 1.42 degrees above pre-industrial levels. But the COP30 conference itself has been widely criticised because of the devastation it's caused to the very environment it's supposed to be protecting. Hypocritically, the authorities behind the conference clearly felled hundreds of thousands of lush old-growth rainforest trees to construct a new 13-kilometre-long 4-lane highway so attendees could travel to the conference in comfort. The diggers and machines carved through rainforest floors, paving over pristine wetlands to surface the highway, which cuts through a protected area and now prevents animals from crossing, reducing the areas where they can live and breed. It's also worth noting that most of the more than 50,000 people attending the conference are flying in, many on private jets. A new study has shown that left-wing extremism is linked to toxic psychopathic tendencies and narcissism. The findings, reported in the journal Current Psychology, show a link between those suffering from psychological behaviour known as the dark ego vehicle principle and higher levels of left-wing authoritarianism and narcissism. The authors found individuals with dark personalities, such as high narcissistic and psychopathic traits, are attracted to certain forms of political and social activism, which they can then use as a vehicle to satisfy their own ego-focused needs, instead of actually aiming at social justice and equality. The authors say certain forms of activism appear to provide these people with opportunities for positive self-presentation and displays of moral superiority, virtue signalling, in order to gain social status, to dominate others, and to engage in social conflicts and aggression to satisfy their needs. The study also found that these people don't actually practice what they preach. However, the authors also stress that authoritarianism exists on both sides of the political spectrum, and there's already extensive research in the field of right-wing authoritarianism. But until now, research on authoritarianism observed in individuals who are supporters of left-wing political ideologies has been far more rare. Scientists have unearthed Australia's oldest known crocodile eggshells, which may have belonged to predators that climbed trees to hunt for prey below. A report in the journal Vertebrate Paleontology claims the 55-million-year-old eggshells, which were found on a farm in Queensland, belong to a long-extinct group of 5-metre-long crocodiles known as Mikosuchis, which lived in inland waters at a time when Australia, Antarctica and South America were still joined into a supercontinent. These semi-arboreal carnivores have now been nicknamed drop crocs because of their hunting technique of dropping out of trees onto unsuspecting prey. Health authorities in Australia have issued another measles alert. The warning comes as death rates from preventable diseases like measles are on a dramatic rise thanks to anti-vaccination campaigns by pseudo-scientific lobbies. Tim Mindham from Australian Skeptics says the latest figures are very concerning.
I worry actually that the United States has seen a measles outbreak. You could call it an epidemic, but it's an outbreak that's more severe than anything they've seen in the last 33 years. In 1992, the number of cases was tapering away and had remained in the low hundreds till spiking again in 2020 and now in 2025. And now it's the highest number they've had for 33 years. Measles in America was regarded as wiped out. It shouldn't have been there, except for people bringing it into the country. So it's not endemic to the US. It has to be imported. Same for most Western countries in the world, actually. Measles was that close to being wiped out entirely. And this is one of the frustrating things that skeptics and medical people everywhere get involved with when you talk about the anti-vaccination movement. You basically need about 95% people vaccinated to put a lock on measles being passed around. And measles is highly contagious, right? It's probably the most contagious disease. So you need about 95% people to reach that herd immunity level. In America at the moment, it's about 92%. That's down a bit. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's enough to get this thing in the system. And therefore what's happening is that people are dying. Often it's kids. Right, there's a number of kids' cases people who have died. They had 1,288 confirmed cases in the US this year to date. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot more than it was. And most measles cases, yes, people can get over it. And it's unpleasant and all that sort of thing. It makes you feel pretty ill. But it can make you very ill and it can kill you. And that's in extreme cases, but it's enough to make you worry about people allowing it to come in. The story that it's gone down to 92 from 95, where it was, is that people are hesitant about vaccines. There's an anti-vaccine movement. People felt a bit over-vaccinated during the COVID pandemic, and therefore that number's been dropping away. Same thing's happening elsewhere in the world. Around Liverpool, in the UK, there's been several deaths, again, often kids, which is the really sad bit, and Liverpool's vaccination rate has dropped dramatically in the area. Northwest of England, don't forget, we're talking about 95% needed for herd immunity. Northwest of England, the figure is 85%, and around Liverpool, it's 73%, according to National Health Service data. So you're talking there about a serious issue of a huge window being opened for highly contagious diseases like measles and mumps and rubella, and eventually you're looking at polio and who knows what else is going to be sort of snuck in, not even under the radar. A big door is being opened up by anti-vaxxers, misinformation, fear tactics, and apathy generally. That's a big issue as well. This is the serious end of the pseudoscience scale of things as opposed to the fun bits that the skeptics deal with of Sasquatches and Loch Ness Monsters and things, UFOs. This is the deadly end. You talk about this with people and it becomes very dark. And unfortunately, that's the case here. People opening the door to measles, other deadly diseases. They're preventable diseases. A vaccination will take it away, not let you catch it in the first place, or allow your body to get used to it and be able to fight it. It's a very sad situation, a very worrying situation.
That's Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics. And that's the show for now. SpaceTime is available every Monday, Wednesday and Friday through Bytes.com, SoundCloud, YouTube, your favourite podcast download provider, and from spacetimewithstuartgary.com. SpaceTime's also broadcast through the National Science Foundation on Science Zone Radio and on both iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. And you can help to support our show by visiting the SpaceTime store for a range of promotional merchandising goodies, or by becoming a SpaceTime patron, which gives you access to triple-episode commercial-free versions of the show, as well as lots of bonus audio content which doesn't go to air, access to our exclusive Facebook group, and other rewards. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.com for full details.
You've been listening to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.